Just talk about it.
Well, we had a fun little evening last night, little end to the show. We had some beers with yourself and John. How often do you guys get together and do stuff like that?
2-3 times a year, maybe.
Oh, that's cool. And out of all the people on the show, on Cheers, who have you remained kind of close with over the years? Is it John?
Pretty much everybody. Rhea, John, Ted, Woody.
Yeah. Very cool. And the show itself, when you got involved, I know you auditioned for it. Was it initially a smaller role, and then it kind of turned into what became Norm, right? Is that kind of how it went?
Yeah, there was a one-line role. My agent called and said, they want you to do a bit. It's small. It's one line. Well, it's one word, actually. It's one syllable, and it was beer. I was meant to be Shelley's first customer, and it was at the end of the episode after Sam hires her. And she goes, hello, I'm Diane, I'll be your waitress today. Well, I'm not really a waitress, I'm an academic, blah, blah, blah. And then she goes on, for a paragraph or two. And then she goes, I'm sorry, I should be taking your order. What can I get for you? And I go, beer. And she goes, beer, perfect. And that was the end of the show. But they said, that's too small to read just that one line, one syllable. So why don't you, take a look at these pages and read this other role. And so a character named George. And so I read that, and that was the Norm role. And so then they, just offered me that instead. So that was nice.
And was there a moment when you kind of knew this show was something special? Because I think everyone who does, a series, you're kind of waiting for the call that you've got renewed for another season and whatnot. But was there a moment where you kind of realized, like, wow, we're a part of something pretty big here?
Well, I knew that it was going to be a quality show because I knew the Charles Brothers and Jim Burrows, from Taxi, and they had a long list of other interesting MTM shows, like the Mary Tyler Moore Show and like Rhoda or something, but in terms of becoming like a big old hit, like it became, it wasn't a certainty until Bill Cosby let off the night in our third year. And then he was such a smash hit right out of the box that we immediately, just rode his coattails for the next 10 years or whatever. But, we did win the Emmy for Best Comedy the first year, and I think Shelley won, and the writers won, and the director won, so it was like, things were, and the critics liked it, so, yeah.
And it still really stands up. Like, years later, people love to revisit the show and watch it. What do you think it is about the show that kind of makes it so timeless and still relevant too? There's a lot of things in that show that still stand up today.
Well, I know that the style of the day back then was topical humor, courting controversy, like, I don't know, Maude would do something about an abortion, or, Archie Bunker was doing his thing. And so our writers consciously stayed away from topical humor, and doesn't really seem dated, and we shot on film, which was, real pretty compared to a lot of the shows back then were shooting on videotape, and the quality, I don't know, doesn't look as rich, and the quality of the writing in general. I really meet a lot of young people who are just catching up on Netflix, and they seem to like it. I think lots of times young people feel like they're being pandered to, like narrow casting to a demographic. But I think the biggest demographic is people who respond to quality.
And the character of Norm, he made the jump a couple times to the animated world on it's both Family Guy and Simpsons, right?
Yeah.
What was that experience like to get that call that like we're gonna now throw you in a Simpsons episode? That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it wasn't that cool back then. I mean, it was always a cool show, but it wasn't like, oh my God, it's The Simpsons. It was like, oh great, because honestly, a lot of the writers were friends of ours. They were, so it didn't come as a surprise, but it was. I don't know if anyone saw that episode of The Simpsons. I think the basic premise was Homer got kicked out of Moe's or something, and so he's looking for a new place to hang out, and he goes in this lesbian bar, and these women are all chatting, and Homer goes, I don't know if I like this place, and so he splits right away, and one of the girls says to the other, what was her problem? And then he comes in cheers, and all I remember is my bit, which was, could I have another beer, Woody? And I don't know, Mr. Peterson, you've had quite a few. And then I grab a beer bottle and I smash it over the bar. Come here, you hillbilly. Give me, like holding a jagged beer bottle to his neck. I say, give me another beer.
And in the Family Guy episode too, that must have been a lot of fun. That show, of course, probably pushed a little further than The Simpsons and Seth MacFarlane behind it.
What that one was about.
It was I vaguely recall. Anyone remember the Family Guy appearance? No? Well, it's out there, so find it. It's on Netflix.
Yeah, I think I did it twice, and I think I did Simpsons twice too, but.
That's very cool. And something else, too, I was actually just with him a couple months ago, but Jason Sudeikis, who is your nephew, which a lot of people, I don't think, know. Did anyone know that? No. Yeah, there you go. So were you always close with him coming up as, he was an actor, and did you give any advice to your nephew getting into the business at all?
Well, he's my nephew and my godson. So, he likes to joke. I saw him on whatever, some, Conan or something, and they said, did George help you? He said, and Jason goes, well, he said, here's what you do. You get on one of the best shows of all time and pretty much take it from there. And so Jason goes, so I did, with Saturday Night Live.
That is some pretty solid advice.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, and it must have been so great for him to have someone like you in his life as he kind of, charts this course through the industry, and you've done it, and you can pass it on. So I'm sure you were probably a huge help for him.
I think just the fact that I did it, and also, I did it starting at Second City, and that's where Jason also started. So, yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, we have a bunch of people here in the audience, and I'm sure you guys have some questions. So if you have a question, I think we can just raise our hands, and I'll repeat the question back if we can't hear it. So let's start over with you in the green hat.
Quick comment and a question. In Cheers, you said you walked into the bar once, and you said to Sammy, he asked you how you were, and you said it's a dog-eat-dog world, Sammy, and I'm wearing milk-bone underwear. I literally walk around telling everybody at work that same phrase.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it was the perfect phrase, and then
yeah.
my question was,
Yeah.
John, in the earlier session, commented about you and Woody always playing practical jokes, and he asked us to
Yeah.
view on that.
He's full of it. He was the one with the practical jokes, and he knew it'd be better if I shared it with you. I don't know why. He didn't want to rat himself out, but no, we used to, it wasn't practical jokes. Like, they didn't get elaborate, like who Matt Damon and who Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy,
Oh, yeah, that's been on
those
for a long
elaborate
time.
things, and I guess Clooney does elaborate ones, and but we did stupid things like water fights, and they would get ridiculous. Like at one point, Woody broke out the fire hose, that was, he couldn't even control it. It was just, the onstage fire hose. And then another time he had me trapped. He had dueling bottles of Perrier, and he's like, I was in my dressing room, and he's just pelting me with the water from the, and so I looked around in my dressing room, this small little, and the only thing that was there was a little bottle of Tabasco. So I go like this with the Tabasco, and he goes, ha, 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 ha. And I go, yeah, 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 yeah. And he goes, ha, ha, ah! And so that was good. And then another time he was right across the hall from me, and I went in his, I had some gas, and I went in his dressing room, and he was on the phone with somebody, and I ripped a fart in his dressing room, and then I closed the door, and I went across the hall to my dressing room, and a few minutes later, now I'm on the phone, and Woody walks in to my dressing room, and just laughing hysterically, and drops his pants, sits on my wastebasket. His face turns purple, and then he pulls up his pants and he runs back across the hall. And I was like, he didn't. And I get off the phone, and sure enough, he laid a little vegan turd in my wastebasket.
I feel like we should just end the panel there, like that.
Well, there's more. I used to sit by the waitress station, as you recall, and so there was always these cocktail straws and cocktail napkins there. And you got to, when things were a little boring and slow, I'd take a cocktail straw and little bits of cocktail napkin and chew it up real fine and shoot spitballs. And I swear, I was deadly. I could launch it across the whole bar, and with pretty good accuracy. And Woody had like a long speech for some reason, and so I was just dinging him off of his forehead while the cameras are rolling. Like if you guys are quick with your freeze frame, you might see that happen. But my shining moment was I actually hit Ted Danson. I shot it right into his mouth and hit his uvula. I swear to God, I saw it all. I saw it, and it just, and it was like, ah! Yeah, so those were, it was a lot of juvenile fun.
It must have taken forever to shoot an episode.
Oh, no, we were a well-oiled machine at that point, but we tried to mess with each other,
Oh, you got to do that. Keep it
Yeah.
fun. And was it hard to kind of keep it together on set? Is all this, the lines are always, everyone's kind of improvising a little bit, adding a little their own flair, and
We didn't, honest to God, John's the only one who improvised.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and frankly, he didn't do it much either, because our writers were, very clever. They really didn't need any help. As a matter of fact, we were more likely to screw something up if we improvised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Very cool. All right. More audience questions that we had at hand. Yeah, let's go right in the front here.
What can you tell us about your experiences playing Bob Swirsky on Saturday Night Live?
Well, it was great fun. I thought, wow, my career is so blessed that two of my most memorable roles, you know, one is to look like a guy who wanted to have a beer. A lifetime in the making for that role. And another was, you know, and I'm born and raised in the south side of Chicago, so, you know, another, you know, I get this other sort of iconic role as a guy who's, you know, loves the Bears and the Bulls and, you know, and I was surprised it it took off and became such a hit character. I'll never forget, you know, waiting, they were counting off 3, 2, 1, live from New York, you know, and, you know, Dana Carvey turned around and looked at me and said, "I hate you. You have a hit character and you're not even on the show." I was like, it's weird, but, and then one time they called me, when the Cubs were gonna do well, but there was a foul ball and Steve Bartman wrecked the Felipe Alou's attempt to catch it. And so they called me and they said, "Hey, can you come, you know, Saturday?" And I said, yeah, I can work that out. And so then this Steve Bartman thing happens, and I thought, well, there goes that gig for the Cubs, you know. But they said, no, come ahead, we'll do something else. So I get there, and you know, by that time Chris had passed, and so we weren't really doing the Superfans per se as a group, because, you know, it was just too weird without Chris. And I think Mike Myers was even gone. So so they said, so I did a bit on Update where I said, you know, sports is not all that important, my friend. What about the movies? Who won the best Oscar this year? Chicago. Who did it beat? Gangs of New York. Stick that in your crack pipe, New York.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right, we had another question. I saw another hand. Where was that? Okay, maybe we don't have any more. All right, let's go to you.
What kind of traditional, have you had a lot of acting training in your career? Was it similar to John and other people how many people on the show had traditional acting training versus people who didn't? I guess is my question.
Yeah, because John said he didn't really have any training, kind of just stepped into it, so.
Right. My training was strictly improvisation. I started out taking classes, workshops at the Second City in Chicago, which is a nightclub, and they've got one, as you probably all know, in Toronto. That opened in '72. The Second City in Chicago opened in 1959, and they've been running ever since. And so I took workshops for about a year there. And, you know, then I got cast in the Second City, and then, so I was already sort of working. And I took a few acting classes after that, but it wasn't a course of studies. But let's see, Ted went to Carnegie Mellon, and they have quite a fine theater program there in Pittsburgh. Also went to Stanford, fancy. And let's see, Shelley, Northwestern, also fancy. I mean, a very fancy musical theater department. Rhea, not sure about Rhea. Kirsty, I doubt it. Seriously doubt it. Some people are naturals, you know. Yeah.
We're talking about this last.
Kelsey, you know, Kelsey went to Juilliard, and, you know, so, and yeah.
We were talking about this last night when the final day of shooting the show, when it all came to an end, and it was, I know, a pretty emotional day. But I thought it was interesting that you said you didn't take anything away from the set at all. I know a lot of people, when things kind of come to an end, you grab a little piece of something, but you didn't do that, did you?
No, I mean, just, what would I take? You know? No. So I took a quarter of my life, roughly.
And then the beer, someone asked last night as well, the beer that was drank on set, was it was a little, sometimes real beer from what I heard, sometimes not, but
Well, very early on in the pilot, actually, prop man was asking our director, Jim Burrows, he said, no, the cast might get sluggish if it was real beer. And, gee, I think, maybe. And so we were drinking non-alcoholic beer, near beer. And back then, there wasn't all these choices, like now there's like fancy Canadian, European, non-alcoholic brews. Back then, I think the only thing they could find was Kingsford, I forget. And it came in a can. It was brewed in Cincinnati, and they wanted it to be on draft. So the prop man would take a Coke, a soda pop dispenser, and pour cans into, to fill up this thing. And of course, they had to do it well ahead of time. So it was completely warm, completely flat, crap beer to begin with, and then they poured it out of the thing, and it was just dead flat. There was no head on it. So they said, and so the prop man, it didn't look good on camera, so the prop man put a little pinch of salt in every beer mug on the stage. And so I had to guzzle warm, flat, stale, salty, shitty near beer. And that's acting.
so you fancy yourself like a beer connoisseur after the show? Like, are you a bit of an expert? Do you have like a favorite kind of like you like the ale, or what do you?
Yeah, well, I'm a beer drinker. Yes, I sort of like it all. I tend to go local, but I'm not an expert. But I do a lot of traveling, so I try to aim for local. It doesn't have to be a craft brew. Could be a local macro brew or whatever. But I've been enjoying some of these local beers around here this weekend.
So if you walk into a bar and order a beer, do people recognize you? You ever had a moment where you've walked into a bar and sat down and they yell Norm?
Well, it's usually takes them by surprise, so they're not organized. You know what I mean? But I used to love back when I was super recognizable. Now I don't really even look that much like Norm. My hair's completely different, and I'm so much older. But so, like, let's say 20 years ago, if I was working in New York, in the summertime, I would just be dead meat on the streets, like in a busy tourist area like Times Square, which is where the theater district is. So that's where I'd be. And, I would just, hi, hello, yes, hello, hey, hi, oh, hey, that's great. And it was, lovely to see everybody, but, absolutely no privacy. So in the winter, I would love it because I could get up and bundled up in a big parka with a hood and a scarf around, so I'm just like, and I'm thinking, this is amazing. Nobody knows, recognizes me. I can just walk around. But then eventually I would go into a bar and it'd be like, people like, oh, there's a fat guy in a parka. And the Robin Hood movies? So it'd be like, it'd be, I take my hood off and undo the scarf and take off my jacket and be like King Richard the Lionhearted. It'd be like, my liege! Oh, they would just, yeah. I was their king.
And that was like, imagine, now if that would happen now, because like this is like, that was cell phone, selfie generation too. Like you think, consider yourself kind of lucky for doing that in that time, or?
Yeah. I mean, now the stage doors on Broadway, it's just insane. I mean, phew, you know, you could spend, like, you know, if you're a big enough star, Denzel Washington did Julius Caesar, and a friend of mine played his wife, and she said it was in his contract that he had to work the stage door crowd like 2 shows a week, and it would take him like 2-3 hours because every single person had a camera.
How do you think the show would have been different too? Because like, you know, now social media is such a big thing. Like shows can kind of take off quicker. You have things you can put on Netflix, and it becomes this massive hit. There's really, the landscape has really changed. How would that, you think, change Cheers? You think it would have, you know, shot to the top faster, or?
I don't know. It depends on if Kirsty was tweeting or, you know, what.
Well, speaking of tweeting, there's been a lot of reboots on TV now. A lot of these shows are coming back, and even the original cast and whatnot. And
Right.
and do you think this is something that you would love to do if you were offered to, you know, reprise the role and come back?
Well, John likes to say that we're all set to go except George won't do it. So he tries to pin me with it. No, I'd be happy to go out, sit in a bar and have amazing comedy writers give you your patter.
Yeah, yeah.
You should, you know, everybody would, you know, who wouldn't want to do that? That's insane.
Well, the reason I say tweeting is there's now, because of some tweets, I think there's a hole in the lineup now on TV. So
Right.
we could slide Cheers right in there maybe.
Yeah, you know, I'm not holding my breath. It'd be nice, but I think Sam Malone at 70 would be an interesting character.
I think so. Yeah, that would be very.
How do you handle that?
Very cool. All right. Any other audience questions? All right. Let's go over to you.
Hi. I'm just wondering, do you have a favorite episode?
It's a very obscure one. But I liked when the boys went skydiving. And we all chickened out. We were up in the plane, actually, and we all chickened out. And we go, oh, no, we can't go back to the bar. What are we going to tell them? And right, we gotta just, we gotta, you know, come up with a story, and you know, we've got to be able to stick to it, and you know, and so Sam goes, we need something simple and believable. Simple and believable. Okay, I've got it. Sam says, we jumped, the parachutes opened, and we landed. It's simple, it's believable. We're like, yeah, we jumped, the parachutes opened, we landed. Okay, so we go back to the bar, and we're like, woo, man, I never felt so alive. We're high-fiving. What? Oh, it was great. Are you kidding? What? Oh, it was the most amazing experience. Oh, yeah? What happened? Oh, it was fantastic. And then Carla corners Woody, and she goes, Woody, what happened? And he goes, what? We jumped, the parachutes opened, and we landed. It was all very simple and believable. And there was another great Woody one that I liked was one of those bar wars with Gary's Old Town Tavern. We did several of those, and Woody got kidnapped, I think, at one point, and we're going, oh, well, where is he? Where could he be? And then the audience sees, you know, like the window, but where the stairs are, go up. I see Woody being lowered down, hung by his feet, like bound with gaffer's tape, and his hands tied behind his back, and he had you know, the duct tape, gaffer's tape across his mouth, and he's dangling there, and we go, there he is, let's go cut him down, you know, and you hear Woody going, and we're like, what would he? What, he's trying to tell us something. We can't understand him with the tape on. So we rip the tape off. He goes, don't rip the tape off.
All right, question over here. It's over to you.
Were you aware of the character Morn from Deep Space Nine back when it was first on?
M-O-U-R-N?
M-O-R-N.
No. I think...
Because all he did was sit at the end of the bar, and he had no lines ever for the entire seven seasons.
Wow.
But his name is Morn, and he was always at the bar with a beard.
Right.
It's giant, like an alien, like a brown sort of.
That's funny.
Were you aware of that?
I think vaguely, yeah, but not, not till later, I think. Yeah.
There's a few episodes of Catch On that it's kind of a inside joke, right?
Yeah.
Now, we were talking with John earlier. He was here, and he was saying that sometimes he, turns on the TV and he's going through channels, and there's stuff that show up that he's forgot he's been in.
Yeah.
Does that happen to you as well? You're watching things, or maybe there's even certain episodes that you forgot, like you've no recollection of, or is anything? Are you ever surprised by your own work?
Usually remember, but, I've had to Google myself to try to remember a credit, like there's some pretty obscure movies and whatnot.
Anything surprising so far at the con that people have brought over to your table that you're like, oh my gosh?
The answer is yes, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what. Yeah, there's always something.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
yes.
All right, any other audience questions? Let's go over to you.
So, George, how was your experience with the movie Gun Ho, with working with Michael Keaton and Mimi Rogers and the whole
John Turturro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the classic favorites.
And every Japanese actor in town. It was really fun. We shot it in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. I know, it was like, I couldn't believe it. Apparently, Detroit felt it was anti-Detroit or something, and so we couldn't. They wouldn't let us shoot in any auto plants, and so their choices were there was, I guess, an abandoned International Harvester plant in Iowa or Illinois someplace, or that they would have to sort of rebuild and dress and get it up and running, or this Fiat plant in Buenos Aires, which was a going concern, and so you could see all the deep background, cars and sparks, and it looked like a proper thing that they wouldn't have to build from scratch. So we all schlepped down to Argentina, and that's a pretty cool trip.
Cool. Well, I think we're about out of time. If we have maybe a couple more, we can squeeze them in. So let's go over to you.
Near the tail end of Frasier's run, you guys did that great episode that was set in like an airport Hilton or something for Cliff's retirement party, and you had that great scene with John Mahoney at the bar, and everybody would like that. What was that experience like doing that episode, and did it feel like something close enough to a quote-unquote reunion show?
No, it wasn't good enough for a reunion show, but it was fun to get to hang with Kels and David Hyde Pearson, John Mahoney, and Mahoney I've known since Chicago theater days, and rest in peace, John just died. It was fun, but it's not a proper Cheers reunion. I think it was just me, Rhea, and John. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. We got a couple more questions here. Let's go over to you in is that an oven mitt?
It's a power glove oven mitt.
Oh, great.
Huh?
Hi there.
Hi.
You mentioned that sometimes the beer was real and sometimes it wasn't. So when Cheers did use real beer, has it happened that any of the actors have been hammered?
When the beer was real, did it ever, people get drunk on set?
Oh, no. I mean, it was like we'd shoot for by about 3 hours, and we'd let the audience go. And then if there were just a few more pickups to clean up, you know, maybe even from a previous show, a moment we needed to pick up, that's when the real beer would come out. And so it'd be, you know, like just little snippets. But, you know, it would take an hour or so, so we'd
Cool. All right, we just had 2 more, so let's go back to you first.
So earlier with John, he was mentioning, you mentioned John Mahoney, and we lost him, and one of the greatest characters on Cheers as coach. What's your fondest memory, or your favorite memory of working with Nick Allsender?
He used to study with Lee Strasberg, and Lee Strasberg, you know, famous acting coach, and he also played Hyman Roth in The Godfather 2. And I don't know if you remember, Hyman Roth he had this vocal tick. This is the business we have chosen. And so Nick explained that Strasberg was great. He had this vocal tick. Whenever he got nervous, he'd be, you know, he said, so he'd be fine during class, the whole class. He went, and then I'd raise my hand, and he'd start going, Colo Santo, you're a dear boy. Come, abbreviate.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, last question right up front here.
Were you guys really drunk on that last episode?
Oh, well, that we not when we were shooting the last episode, when we watched it, and we went on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. Yeah, we were hammered. That was not cute. I mean, we thought we were way funnier than we really were.
All right, well, I think that's a very fitting way to end this panel. So give it up for George Wendt, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the Convention Junkies coverage of the 2018 Niagara Falls Comic Con. Please like, comment and subscribe to see more, and let us know below what you think of this video. If you would like to help us with future projects, please visit our Patreon page.